Hello, friends. I am so delighted to be joined today by Justin and Lindsey Holcomb. Justin is an Episcopal priest and teaches theology at Reformed Theological Seminary, Orlando. He serves on the boards of Grace, Godly Response to Abuse in Christian Environments, and REST, Real Escape from the Sex Trade. Lindsey holds a master's degree in public health with a focus on violence against women and counsels victims of sexual assault and domestic violence. She has provided crisis intervention to victims of sexual assault and domestic violence and conducted a variety of training seminars to service providers. And she's worked as a case manager at a sexual assault crisis center and domestic violence shelter. Justin and Lindsey live in Orlando, Florida, with their 2 daughters. Thank you both for taking the time to chat with me today. I'm really excited.
Thanks for having us. Definitely.
Well, my family and I have one of your books for children on our shelf, God Made All of Me. And so we have really appreciated this book. It's been a great one to read aloud with our children and open up conversations. And one of the things I love about the book is that it really roots a child's understanding of the value of their body in who they are as humans created in God's image. And so can you tell me a little bit about, why you wrote this book?
I'll go first. I'll do so what ends up happening is Lindsey, when we were dating, I was the seminary professor at the University of Virginia, and she was the case manager. So I emphasize some of the research justifying why we're doing this, and she advocating and doing all the creative and kind of the care for the survivor type of stuff. And I've learned from her. So I'm going first only because the stats kind of set the reason, and there's more reasons than that. But the big one, if you think through, well, we wrote a book called Rid of My Disgrace about 10 years ago, and that was for survivors of sexual assault. And the numbers there are staggering. They're 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men are or will be survivors of sexual abuse in their lifetime. And so the purpose of this is to try to prevent that from happening. We want people to not have to read that book about hope and healing because that's not their experience. So the first thing is just preventative, because 1 in 5 children will be sexually abused before their 18th birthday. That's the statistic that is, and that's not, we're not being dramatic. We're not pumping those numbers up. It's probably worse than that. And so we actually put very conservative numbers on that. And this is important for your audience because many people in your audience will be thinking that they're safe. Things are different because of, and they might be a little bit more or less just because there's just less interaction with certain people that they assume would be dangerous. I don't know what the statistics would be, but the statistics across the board are 34% of perpetrators are family members. 58% are known to the child and family. Only 7% are strangers. And so the rationale many people are thinking is, oh, well, I mean, our family's safe and our circle's safe, and it's all those strangers. Well, they don't have that as many interactions, perhaps socially, just because if you're homeschooled, you're not usually with a bunch of other kids and families all around. And so there's a slight minimization of the interaction, but that's not the threat. The threat is not strangers, people out there. It's someone who's known to the family or in the family. 93% are family members or friends or acquaintances, known, trusted acquaintances of the family or the child. So those are the big ones. The other major thing is that parents are frequently worried about fire safety, swimming safety, traffic, biking safety, and a whole bunch of other things. We live in Florida. And so when we moved here, one of the first things I moved back here, but when we moved here, our children were 3 and 5. They were taking swimming lessons to make sure. So swimming safety, what do we do if there's a fire? And how do you cross a street? And so the book is to do personal safety. That's the languages, because we don't want children to feel scared. So like, hey, mom and dad, why are we reading this book? Well, we want to talk about personal safety. And so it minimizes, it's not leading with fear. And so that's the big reason, is to minimize, because there's a huge problem that's not being discussed. The other reason is because we had children at the time, and Lindsey was looking around and kind of leading the charge on different books that were age appropriate, and we had a pile of them, and we noticed that there was something missing. There was a Christian book that uses scripture, Christian language and categories to talk about body and threats and so just to frame the whole conversation. So Lindsey just said, well, we'll just make the book. So I don't think like that. I mean, that's how she thinks. I make things that exist like really good or better. She creates things out of nothing. So she thought, let's create this book, and then it went from there. So what are other reasons are there other reasons you can think of, hon?
Sure. I mean, definitely those are all big ones. Like Justin said, there really wasn't anything on the market that I felt comfortable saying, I would want to read this with my kids or pass on to somebody else. And around the time our kids were 2, 3, and 4, one, they're asking questions. And I kind of saw within our friend group, nobody really was having these conversations. And so I'm trying to figure it out because I had been working in these roles with adult women who were victimized when they were children. And kind of the general feedback was nobody ever talked to me. Nobody ever educated me. Nobody ever protected me. Nobody ever listened to me if I did disclose. There just was no empowerment, and how devastating that was for them, in addition to the shame and the guilt and the blame and all those emotions. And so it really made me think, my goodness, like it's this model they talk about in public health where you've got to go upstream. Like you've got this problem downstream, but let's go upstream and figure out like, why do people keep falling in the river? And I hate the bully. And so I'm like, the bully is these perpetrators. And I'm like, if we can get ahead of these perpetrators and educate thousands of children to be able to name their body parts and call it out or know who to talk to, who are some trusted adults that they can disclose to, how amazing. Like my work is done on earth if we can do that. So we found that parents weren't having the conversations. They were worried about, if I say it wrong, I'm going to mess it up, and just like avoiding it altogether. And so I feel like this book is such a great foundation that then you can have further conversations that aren't going to be weird. It's weird to sit your kid down at 13 and have all of the talks, between body safety and, sex awareness and then throw in relationships and healthy relationships. Like you've got to start small, one, because their attention span is small. And then it establishes such trust in the sense of like, our girls know that we talk about these things. They talk to us about, questions or any areas of concern they have. And it's not perfect at all. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you do all these things and you're 100% protected. However, it does mean you're putting in such a foundation of open conversation, where we're telling them, over time, as it's developmentally appropriate, we're telling them the truth. So when they hear something at school, they're like, that is definitely not right, from their peers. Or if something uncomfortable happens, then we're going to be able to intervene right away. That's our hope. And it's the same thing. We wear our seatbelts. They're not foolproof. We teach, swimming safety, like Justin said. We teach our kids every lake has an alligator in Florida. It's not foolproof. However, it is building such kind of a force field that it reduces the vulnerabilities significantly by having these conversations. So that was the reason. We found people were not having them. Even to this day, I'm like, you have a 15-year-old, you've never had this conversation, like start with our book. It's going to be a little bit awkward, but here you can go. And so it's a tool for parents to hopefully mitigate some of those awkward conversations because you're reading. And we found that with our girls was really helpful by just cuddling up on the couch and reading the book. And so they call it the body book. That's what they termed it. And they were like, you're going to read the body book again. But it works. It does. It has provided such appropriate language for talking about these topics.
Well, and something Lindsey just said was the goal of the book, which is, I think, key of all of this, is to make a tool for parents and caregivers. And so I want to highlight that because there's a few things parents can do, and it's actually really easy. It's not as difficult as most parents think, which is help them understand what sexual abuse is. And you can talk about it in a way, you don't just start the conversation and say, hey, 4-year-old, like there's a thing called sexual abuse. Like there's ways of getting there. So that the tool is to do one thing, help parents communicate and help children understand what sexual abuse is. And the other is to empower them to avoid abuse and protect themselves and then to teach children to tell someone immediately. Like those are huge pieces right there. I mean, enormous, because most perpetrators don't just kind of dive into the deep end of abuse. They're grooming, they're preparing things, they're for days, weeks, months, they're grooming. And knowing what perpetrators do, we wrote a book knowing the behavior and characteristics of perpetrators to help families and kids have the tools to see it and how to respond, and things that a perpetrator would do to kind of slowly inch closer and closer and closer with touch and words and secrets. We're trying to pull the rug out from underneath them as quickly as possible. And it's honestly, it's one of the most awkward stories, not books, in that the story is watching another family have the conversation. I mean, we didn't have like cute animals having conversations about animal body parts. Like it's literally a family doing the conversation. But we did that on purpose because we wanted moms and dads and care children to basically have a little bit of distance to observe another family having this conversation. But it's literally this illustrated family is doing the conversation for the parents. And that way there's a little bit of distance, so it's not as awkward. We say all the body parts, the proper names for body parts, so you don't have to immediately. But by the way, just so all the parents know, the favorite page of all children is the proper names for private parts page. Children love that page. And so we have the fun for you by getting them to giggle and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah,
we could talk forever on just that one question. So I'll be quiet so we can move on.
Well, I just want to reiterate what you guys are saying, and this is exactly why I wanted to have you guys on. I was telling you a little bit before we started recording. This is something I think my parents did a really good job doing growing up. This was my experience, my earliest ages. We were talking about proper names of body parts.
Wow.
There were very open conversations about like, you know, hey, we're going to go be with extended family or at this church camp. I want you to know, I remember multiple times my mom telling me, like, you can tell me anything. And it doesn't matter if it's my best friend or someone that we're related to, like, I will believe you. You know, like if anyone makes you feel uncomfortable, you come tell me right away. And just how safe that made me feel. And I never felt like scared or awkward about that. That was just more like, oh, hey, my parents would believe me. And I know that no one gets to be tricky around me. And that's something I talk with my own children about. And I think sometimes there is that feeling of like, well, if I say it wrong, like that awkwardness, like I don't want to say the wrong thing, but it's so much worse to not say anything at all than to maybe say it awkwardly. And I've even talked to some of my kids, we'll be having a conversation, I'll be like, man, you know, sometimes this is really awkward. Mommy's feeling really awkward, but like, just because we're feeling awkward, that doesn't mean we can't have the conversation. So if you feel awkward, you know, mommy feels awkward sometimes too, and that's okay.
Well, one of the most, I was just reading, I'm on a sabbatical, so I'm actually just doing some fun reading now. And so my fun reading was something about parenting, but it mentioned that one of the most powerful things for children is a deep sense of safety. And like just hearing you describe what your parents did is moving. Like, because that's the stuff that we say all the time, but it's just cool hearing like another family do it. Like I'm feeling safe. It was just like the idea of someone's so intentional about kind of, I mean, I'm just imagining a kid feeling like that, and imagine what my girls feel like of a deep sense of safety for their well-being and for their role in the family, and that someone's there behind them in their corner watching out for them. That's just a cool experience for a child to have. That's not, I mean, listening to what you just said, like some parents think this is an awkward conversation, but what you just described was the other end of the spectrum of awkward. Like, I just imagine a kid hearing that and just kind of sitting down and being able to breathe out loud and sigh relief and be like, ah. Because the world for the kids is crazy already. I mean, they've got TikTok and weird stuff happening there. They have kids at school saying things, calling them names, or their friends down the road. And they have family members who are sometimes weird and awkward and creepy, or perpetrators. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff out there. And so I love what you just said. It was just really, it was powerful. It was beautiful to just imagine a child feeling safe like that.
And that wasn't the norm back then. I mean, I'm assuming 80s, 90s, that was not the norm. But I think it's so simple, you know, just to say those things, but it's if most adults our age did not grow up that way. I got a video when I was like 13, and that was it. There really wasn't even a conversation after the video. And I don't even know what the video is about, but it was awkward. And I remember I was uncomfortable. But if most adults our age did not grow up with parents like yours, then we don't know how to have those healthy conversations. Though if it's very simple conversations of saying, I believe you no matter what happens and who it is, you tell me and I will believe you. Like, that's simple. Like, you don't have to go and get a PhD to have that conversation. But most people don't have what your parents equipped you with. And it's unfortunate, you know, for our kids, but we can't just be like, well, I didn't grow up with that. So there's no excuse. We know better. And the perpetrators, they are very smart. They will groom, they will take their time. They are conniving, they are purposeful. It's not like oh, it just happened. I wasn't even thinking about it. Like, they're calculated. It is evil. And so as parents, one of our jobs is, well, it is to protect our children. And this is part of it, and we have to fight. We have to go ahead of them and be ahead of the perpetrators with education and conversation. So kudos to your parents.
Well, I'm very
cry as I was listening.
I'm really thankful. And I guess, you know, as most kids do, you take for granted like what you experience. And I guess I realize more and more now how unusual it was. And I'm very thankful for that. We've touched a little bit on some of these myths that maybe people have or believe. Some of the statistics, Justin, you already mentioned, but I guess I would like to maybe dive a little bit more into some of these myths, like, well, my child's too young to have this conversation, or like, well, we hang out with church people, so we'll be fine. You know, are there any other myths you think that parents really need to erase from their mind? Lindsey, how about
Let's start. Go for it, Lindsey.
Well, I was gonna say, you jump in because I'm trying to think through my list of ones.
Yeah, let's go for the first one. Is you're too young to have it. And again, I'm saying what I learned from Lindsey. I mean, I remember her just saying how important body awareness was. So we had two girls, and so she's changing their diaper, and she's like, there's no age this too soon. So she's changing their diaper and actually having a conversation with them, like, hey, I'm going to change your diaper, and this is what I'm doing. She just kind of described, just made it. She normalized, like, the body parts and private parts weren't something to hide or to feel shame about. And I'm sure we'll get to it, but we already talked about appropriate names, proper names for body parts. We're not saying you can never use like a nickname or whatever people have, but just it's good to actually establish that, because using playful names, well, one, it turns a private part into a plaything, which is what a perpetrator is trying to do. It also communicates, like, because that's my elbow, like it's just what it's called. It's an elbow. And you know, that's my ear, and you know, here's the back of my knee. I mean, that's just what it is. And so when you start getting to certain parts, you're like, oh, that's your lily. You're like, suddenly it communicates to the child, like, oh, this is something of which we do not speak, apparently, and I probably shouldn't talk about it. If someone touches it, I shouldn't say anything because it's shameful. And so it actually, just doing that communicates awkwardness and shame. And so when Lindsey was doing that, it just normalized it. That was huge. So, and then the conversation, like Lindsey said, having the conversation at 13 and 15, and if you haven't had the conversation, go for it. So we're not trying to shame the people that haven't had the conversation, but having that conversation regularly, that's a path that's been trodden with our children. Like, is trodden a word? Trodden. I'm sure it is.
We'll go with it.
But the same thing happens, like when, like, you see where people like lay sidewalks down. And one time we were at a hotel and we were looking down, and I saw like where the sidewalk was, and then I saw where everyone else just walked. And then they just kind of created a pathway right there, because that pathway has been blazed by many people walking there. And so I think of that, like, that's the pathway that Lindsey and I have walked with our children on a regular, like, when we come back from a date, we go, hey, how'd you feel with the babysitter? Pretty good. Any weird questions? No. Did she take pictures of you with your phone? No. Or so the conversations we've already been talking about, having those micro conversations, like just little drips here and there, works really well. The other one is the perceived safety. And I don't want to scare people, so I'm not trying to scare people with these numbers, but a perpetrator is so, a perpetrator is like a lion stalking prey. Like a lion is hungry. It will lay there all day for the right time to strike. Perpetrators who violate Male perpetrators who violate male children have an average of 150 in their lifetime before they get convicted. A perpetrator who violates,
that's 150 separate victims, not 150
separate victims. They know exactly what they're doing. They know how to lie. They know how to wait. They know how to do things when the time is right. I mean, let me tell you this one. Half of all sexual perpetrators against children have perpetrated with other children in the room. And about 35% perpetrate with another adult in the room. Why? Because when a child says, oh, well, it happened in Sunday school, like that, all that person has to say is, really, in Sunday school with all these children around? And so they're trying to minimize the credibility of the child. Really, with another adult in the room? And so they're always they're looking for the child who has behavior issues, who might not be trusted. Like, and there's some quotes which I will not read because it's disgusting. But I'll summarize them. A convicted child molester was interviewed by a therapist and said, "We want to understand. Tell us what's going on." I said, "Oh, I would look at a group of like 20 kids and I'd find the small handful that I was attracted to, and then I'd look for the ones that wouldn't have as much oversight from family. And then I'd look for one that might not be believed. And then I'd just take my time before I would strike." Like it was like a lion stalking a little antelope that's clueless about what's going on. And the stats I gave earlier is that because you're in the church, you might think you're safe, but the problem is that 1/3 are family members. And the other 60% are people in the circle. And I'm on the board of Grace, Godly Response to Abuse in Christian Environments. And I can tell you that the statistics of abuse in the church are not encouraging at all. As a matter of fact, abuse in the church gets hidden and gets theologically kind of covered over because we don't want to bring out allegations against the pastor because we don't want people to think badly about the church. There's so many justifications people have for covering up and hiding abuse. Look at Ravi Zacharias. That's the newest one. But just look at the list of people that got the benefit of the doubt, and then you find out that they're dirtbags who abuse other people on a regular basis. They're predators. And so the church should be the place that is unbelievably safe, where we walk in the light, we say true things. But people's experience is that that's not the case.
And the only one that I'm going to add to that, because he listed off some really great ones, is I've heard some parents say, if I talk about sexual abuse, if I talk about any of this, I'm going to scare my kid. And I'm like, well, there is a way that you can talk about it. You can read our book and you can have these small conversations with them. So you're not just like dumping all this. There has to be developmentally appropriate conversations. 100% would say that. But actually what ends up happening is if you do not talk about this with your children and something happens or something makes them feel uncomfortable and it's kind of in that gray zone, they are going to think, my mom and dad don't talk about this. They don't know about this. If I bring it up, I'm going to freak them out. I'm going to scare them. I'm going to get in trouble. Like there's so many things. The kid's head's going to be swirling, as opposed to a child who has been having these conversations with their parents. They're going to say, my mom and dad know about this. I know that I am believed. I know I was told X, Y, and Z to come to them, that I am not at fault. This was not, all those good things that your parents told you. They will come to you with complete trust and hope that you're going to advocate for them and stop this and believe them. As opposed to if you don't have the conversation, they're going to literally think, I can't tell my mom and dad this. They don't know about this. And this is going to scare them. Like it doesn't work. And so you've got to throw that myth out. And then there is one more. I think people will think like, as long as I stay away from the stranger in the bushes, and Justin talked about this with, it's the acquaintances, but even more so, they'll think, well, the people I'm around are Christians, they're healthy, they're not mentally ill, they're not weird, creepy, they don't look creepy. There's some people that just give you that creepy vibe, but they're like, they don't look creepy. Well, unfortunately, perpetrators don't necessarily look creepy. They are your all-star coaches and doctors and lawyers and police officers, dentists,
pastors
volunteers at the church, pastors. Like they don't necessarily look creepy. I mean, I think I go around and think everybody looks creepy just because of the work we've done. But for the most part, you people that are normal, these perpetrators don't look creepy. They are the all-star American hero of the neighborhood. And when an allegation comes out, everyone's like, oh my goodness, they were so involved with church and school, and they've been a teacher or a substitute teacher. So you can't just say, I'm going to just stay away from those that are mentally ill, or this kind of, dark side of town, or this doesn't happen in our church. Unfortunately, sexual abuse is widespread across all socioeconomic levels and races, religions, ethnic groups, cities, counties, towns, you name it. Does not discriminate.
Both of you have brought up a couple times, like we're having this conversation, at age appropriate levels with our children. So I'm imagining like there's someone listening to this and they're like, oh my goodness, I don't even know where to start. Could you kind of give us maybe just, I know this could be a long thing, but a short kind of example of where we're talking about like a toddler, obviously we're naming their body parts, and then they're like 2 or 3 or 4, and sort of the stages, what would be appropriate to be saying to them at different ages along the way?
That's a really good question. I would say, this book is kind of geared for 2 to 8-year-olds. And so you could read the whole thing with a 2-year-old versus a 5 or an 8-year-old, and it goes through appropriate and inappropriate touch. It names the body parts. Those things need to happen at 2, 3, 5, 7, 8, and all the way up. So with that being said, I would say, like Justin said, when ours were babies and I'd be changing their diapers, like I was already starting to name their body parts, like what I am cleaning, what I am washing. And I would even, they were babies, and I'm like, it's okay, because I'm your mom, I'm your dad. These are the people that are safe to be helping you, but this is your body. Like I kind of just went overkill. But you can start that, make that conversation regular. And it's not like we talk about this 24/7. I don't want people to hear this and be like, oh my goodness, I've got to work this into all facets of our day. But just make it so routine and normal that you're not intermixing it with like other weird language and other like cutesy code names. Because what ends up happening if somebody does touch them or show them something, but they've been learning to call their private parts their pocketbook, well, then that is not going to hold up in court. That will not work out with a police officer or a detective, because then the perpetrator is like, well, I showed her a purse. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. So I think from the very get-go, you can start with our book all the way up. There are certain things, like our girls are now 10 and 12. And there's some, if you Google like age appropriate, like it's called like sexual development health, like there's certain ages, like around age 5, kids are really into their private parts. Like boys, Justin can agree, like they want to show their private parts. I'm sure most readers that have, or listeners that have boys.
Why'd you point to me?
Well, just stories when you told me you were like in kindergarten.
I know, I did.
But I think
back when I was in kindergarten, back in
Just
kindergarten.
to clarify.
So I don't want parents to worry like, oh my gosh, my kid is like showing off their private parts. There are very appropriate things when you're 5. 5 and 6, but I would say, your kids. I think you can have all of this conversation around 2, and then you just keep on developing it as they get older. There's not certain parts of the book that only need to be mentioned when they're 2 and then when they're 3. You need to mention from the get-go proper names of the body parts. Start talking about appropriate and inappropriate touch. We don't use bad and good touch, and we can get into that later, but you kind of start really going through that. You start identifying who are people that make you feel safe. And that may change over the years, especially as they, meet different people and get into school and kind of have interactions with other adults, but start making that list. And that will develop, and the questions are going to develop. Our 10-year-old was asking the other day, she was like, how do people abuse people? And I was like, oof. And so that's a question at age 10 that she wouldn't have asked around, 5 and 6. And I would not have wanted to walk her through what that looks like and how and why. And so even still at age 10, I'm like, oh my goodness, like I won't have the same conversations at age 10 that I will when she's 16 or 18. I work in the world of sex trafficking, doing grant writing and marketing kind of behind the scenes. And they know a little bit about what I do, but there's certain things that I'm still protecting them from, because I'm like, you're 10 and 12. Like I've got to do as much as I can to shield you, but still prepare you. So I don't know. I'm not able to sit and say at age 2 versus age 6, at age 6, you start talking about touch versus age 2, you talk about naming the body parts. I think you can do all of that that's in the book from the get-go. We picked age 2 just because I think they're kind of looking at books more often.
Well, something I learned from Lindsey on age appropriate was just talking about sex in general, and the where babies come from conversation. I came home from being gone for the day, and came home, and the conversation had taken place at a different level than it had ever taken place before. And so I walked in, and the girls were giggling, and they had a fun time hearing about how babies are made. But what ended up happening was, at one point, one of them said, "Hey, where do babies come from?" And then so Lindsey said, "Just answer the question. Answer the question they're actually asking, not the one that you're afraid that they're asking." And they come from the mommy's belly, from this area. Okay. And that was good for 3 to 6 months. And then it was like, oh, well, how does the baby get in there? Well, God takes a piece from dad and a piece from mommy and makes a baby. Oh, sounds great to me. Well, I would have been talking about other very specific things a year earlier than I needed to. And so that's a good rule of thumb, is answer the question that they're asking, and not the one that you think they're asking as an adult. And they can always ask another question, which has been huge. So coming back to the issue of abuse, we talked about, Lindsey already talked about them, but private parts, touch, and then awareness early on is awareness that you can say no to other people touching you at all. If you feel awkward, any type of touch, grandma, grandpa, uncle, aunt, any type of touch. And so that's early on. Now that gets, you build on that. You talk about tricky people early on. That tricky people can last for a while. And then you start saying, evil doers or bad people who do bad, evil things. You ramp that language up when you have a sense that child can handle that category without, scaring them like crazy. And then I still remember one daughter heard, and I just want to be really sensitive for people who are listening. I just want to just start throwing words around, but so she just heard the word rape, and she just looked at me and said, "What's rape?" And I was like, "Whoa." So I started crying, because I cry a lot. And I was like, go talk to mom. Because I can't tell my 12-year-old what that is. Well, they already had the conversation. She was still processing a little bit. Well, the 10-year-old daughter hasn't thought about that. And so right now we're still talking about, oh, well, they touch your private parts when you don't want them to. That's a good enough answer for her right now. She doesn't need to know the horror of the details of what takes place. And so I think that answer the question they have, try to protect them from the trauma of the imagination of what's happening, but without giving them a false sense of security in themselves. You want them to be vigilant, and different children at different ages are going to have it. So I think that's more of the principle to go with.
Yeah.
I would add, keep it simple too. Like Justin's saying, answer the question, keep it simple. When I say name the body parts, I'm not saying teach an anatomy lesson. Just keep it simple and answer the question, and they will let you know when they're done. I think, as all of us with younger ones know, that they don't want a whole lecture. That's not going to help or work at all. And one thing that we did is, when they were little, I would kind of sit with them at the table, and we would just go through some scenarios. When they were young, they were really simple scenarios. Like, if you're at the park and somebody says, "Can you help me look for my bunny?" What would you do? Now, as they're older, our scenarios have changed, just because of where they are and what, just life experiences and just a little bit deeper conversation. So I think that's another example that you can kind of just gauge it. And your kids are going to be different. You have so many ages in your family. And so I think for you, Amy, you're going to talk to your older ones very different than your 6-year-old. And so just kind of gauging it. And every 6-year-old is going to be different. Whereas our daughter, who's now 12, she was asking, okay, I know God takes a little bit of mommy and a little bit of daddy and puts them in the tummy, but how and why? She really wanted to know more. And our youngest one was right along in the mix. And so I was like, well, you guys are 4 and almost 6. Let's have this conversation. As opposed to, we have a lot of friends that are just having that conversation in 5th grade. Or is one better than the other? No. I think it just depends on the child too.
Yeah. And I just want to also mention from our family's personal experience. In our family devotions in the evening, we just read through the Bible. So we go through and then we start back at the beginning. And that actually is another way that some of these topics, like assault, even, these really hard topics, to make them something that, not that they're easy to talk about, but that happens in the Bible quite frequently. And so you're reading it all out loud together as a family, and someone asks a question, and then there's a way in which you can answer questions with a wide range of ages that's appropriate without freaking anybody out, but that's still dealing with these as things, things our family can talk about, I guess. Like, this is within the bounds of things our family talks about. And so just reading the scripture, not being afraid to read those hard chapters with your family, I think can also be a way to make some of those conversations a little bit more natural.
I love that, because then it gives you the category of a narrative, and it also gives you language of how the Bible refers to that, which is sin. It's not just some bad thing out there, but it's a crime and it's a sin. So it helps frame it. And it's interesting for the kids to be like, oh, that's in the Bible? Yeah, why isn't it in the Bible? That's so bad, Mom and Dad. Because it's sin, and this is what Jesus is coming to fix. Like, this is why it's that bad. And so I think that's a brilliant thing to do. I love that.
Okay, I have one more question I want to ask about this, and then I want to talk about your new book, which I'm super excited about. But I did just want to touch on, I think Lindsey brought up earlier, sort of the inappropriate versus appropriate. You guys talk about that in this book, use that terminology, or secrets versus surprises. Why does this terminology matter?
Well, I'll do the secrets and surprises, and you go for appropriate, inappropriate touch, if that's okay, honey. Perpetrators will use the categories of secrets. And so that the reason you throw out the word secret and use the language of surprise, because secrets are usually information that is supposed to be secretive, exclusive, it isolates. And there's numerous reasons that we use the language of surprise, because surprises are usually involve other people, and they're good news, and it's surprise parties, or here's a present, or we're going on this trip, or so-and-so's coming over, like, yay, as opposed to secret, which is isolating and scary. Main reason is because a perpetrator will use the category of secrets. Let's keep this a secret between you and me, and you're not allowed to lie and say you can't. And so just letting them know you don't tell secrets, like, or you don't let anyone have secrets with you. You don't keep secrets with people. Very rarely are you going to have an issue with this, but it is fun because our girls have heard this so many times. And so a few years ago, one of our daughter's friends was like, hey, can I tell you a secret? She's like, no secrets. I cannot hear a secret. She's like, I wanted you to come over to my house for my birthday party. I can't invite everybody. We're like, okay, that's different. That's a surprise. But that's the reason to stay away from secrets, because perpetrators, one of the main tools of a perpetrator is the category of secret, to keep the child quiet and to keep the evil going. And that's the category to threaten. If you don't keep this a secret, your mom and dad might get hurt, or I'll go tell on you and you'll go to jail, or your mom and dad will be really disappointed. And it's our secret, because dirty ththings happen to dirty children, and you apparently are dirty. And so I'm here to help you, but I'll keep it our secret to help you. And that's how they talk to them. And so you're pulling the rug out from underneath the perpetrator.
Yeah. And then we use the language appropriate and inappropriate touch is because when we started doing research and thinking through the words good and bad, just how confusing that can be to kids, because we as adults, we can frame, what is bad touch, and we might even call it evil touch, but we know what's bad touch. But to a child, bad touch can sometimes, it can feel really confusing. It can feel good. It might, and I can go into more examples of that, but it might feel really good. It might be, and then good touch can feel bad. Like it made it too complicated to get into. It had too many opinions. And so, for example, sometimes children that have been abused struggle because they might say as they get older, they're like, I was abused by my grandpa, and I would be touched constantly by him. And it felt really good because I wanted his love, like I wanted his attention, but it also was wrong, and it made me feel really bad and dirty. And so there's just so much confusion. And then they're like, what's wrong with me? And did I want this? Did I not want this? And then there's also, there's like a physiological response sometimes to a body, like touch, sexual touch can feel good in a certain way, even though it's bad. And that can be for a child. And so that's really confusing, to be like, my body responded in a certain way and it felt really good to be, touched in this manner, but I didn't like it in my heart and my head, but my body was. So there is just a lot of confusion there that can just bring in shame. And so appropriate and inappropriate touch was two better categories to kind of really frame, what does society say? What does God say is appropriate and inappropriate without any emotion kind of added to it, or feelings or opinion, or not opinion, but kind of just that physiological response. What would you say, Justin? That's a hard one sometimes for me to.
Well, I think you nailed it. I think you said it perfectly, which I haven't heard us or you talk about before, which is, sometimes the inappropriate touch, abusive touch, feels good emotionally because it's attention from the person, but when abusive touch feels good physiologically, that's where it's really confusing, because you're mixing pleasure and pain together, and it's distorting true pleasure. I was abused when I was 10, and I can tell you what happens to a 10-year-old's body when certain private parts are touched. It is very confusing when you're thinking that felt good, but that was really evil, and you slam those together.
And especially if it's done by someone you trust too. So that is a whole other element. If it's a creeper in the bushes or some stranger, you can kind of separate. But when it's someone that that has been remotely kind, especially with grooming, that's even more confusing.
If you're 6 and it's your 12-year-old brother, if you're a 6-year-old girl or boy, but if you're younger and your 12-year-old brother, or your dad, or your uncle, or your favorite Sunday school teacher, or your coach, like the mixture of emotions, I think that's the confusion right there. And so it's just easier, as clunky as it sounds, inappropriate and inappropriate touch. Children will figure this out. This has not been an issue at all in the conversation, but staying away from good and bad touch just for the sake of your future child, who might need to have a different category to interpret what happened to them.
Yeah, words matter, so it's good to use appropriate words to talk about these topics. Well, let's transition a little bit to your new book, which, might sound like we're talking about a different topic, but really, as I was reading, looking ahead at the book that has not yet been released yet, but this book is dealing with children and body image. And it really, though, comes from that same foundation of who God made us to be, who we are as image bearers of God. So while it might seem on the face of it, well, these are two different topics, they're really talking about kind of the same thing. And so I guess I want to ask, I should say the title. The title is God Made Me in His Image, Helping Children Appreciate Their Bodies. So I could imagine someone being like, man, now you've already blown my mind. I need to be talking to, about protecting their bodies with my young children. But surely body image is not something I need to be talking to children about. What would you say to that person?
Sexual abuse statistics. And that's what's happening. We can tell you stories. We can tell you stories about how both of our girls, who are probably average child size or smaller, called fat. Their friends being called fat. It's in their mind already. Children are hearing it, watching it, seeing it. But I can give you some statistics on this. But by the age of 6, the majority of girls start to express concerns about their weight or the shape of their body. So 6 is a pretty early age to start being critical of yourself. Half of American children between 1st and 3rd grade, so 6 and 8, are worried about their weight, and 1/3 of them have already reported dieting. By the age of 10 or 11, I think it's 80% of girls have done restrictive eating at some point. And so the average age of child dieting is 10. So that's huge. And that's not just for girls. Boys are just as worried about body image. Little boys should not be worried about how much chicken they're eating so they can get protein, so their muscles can grow. And they're doing way more push-ups than a little 8, 9, 10-year-old body is supposed to actually be able to handle. And so it is a enormous issue. And just the idea of, I'm going back to that safety conversation we had a while ago, because the beauty of that is when you're talking about your parents making you feel safe, is you feel like that's not critical. That's safety affirming. Imagine the opposite of that, of condemnation, of that voice, when that voice finally gets in your head and goes, oh, that's not normal. Like, other people have a different size nose. Your eyebrows are really big. Your body's shaped differently than the person you really like. And someone says something to you and it's on TV and it's everywhere. So that just imagine the condemnation swirl child who shouldn't have to be worrying about this, and it's swirling. I mean, when we started talking to the publisher, we said, we want to do a children's book on child sexual abuse prevention, which is not a normal topic. And they said, man, and the book just sold 100,000 copies. We just got word last week that 100,000 copies, which means there's 100,000 families who probably read it and then passed it on. So at least 100,000. When Lindsey said, like, our work is done, like, that's pretty fulfilling. And they said, well, what other topics are out there? So we didn't just pick a topic that we needed a book on, like we did the first one. We started doing the research. Like, we talked to a child development psychologist. We talked to experts or therapists and said, what are the key issues that children are dealing with? And they said, man, if you did something on body image, like, it's through the roof. I mean, we could look at the statistics on eating disorders, body image distortion, disorder relationship with food and one's body image. It's enormous with the adults, and the children are learning from the parents. Unfortunately, because of the statistics we know about distorted body image issues for adults, we're finding that parents are sometimes the worst negative influence on a child's version or view of their own body, because the children are listening to the parents criticize their own bodies. I as a man, I'm not in women land as much. Well, I do work out at Orange Theory, which at the time I go, there's mostly women there, with a few, like, there's like 3 or 4 guys, but I don't traffic a lot where it's just women only conversations. And so what I've heard, like, I as a grown man should not be hearing a woman publicly criticize her body in a bathing suit. Not just for me, I don't want to hear it. Like, I don't want to have to affirm you on your issues with you in a bathing suit, but a kid doesn't need to be hearing that. I've been shocked at what I've heard frequently mothers say about themselves negatively in front of their children. And I'm in the room. It makes me wonder what they say when I'm not in the room. But, like, a mother should never grab any part of her body and say, oh, I'm just too fat for this outfit. Like that. Like, it makes it awkward for me, but more importantly, that kid is hearing you criticize God's creation in your body, and you're teaching them how to hate themselves. You're teaching them how to be their own voice of condemnation. So,
And I would,
no, it's very convicting. Go ahead, Lindsey.
He's a good girl dad. I would add to that, you said, why should parents be concerned about this? Like Justin said, parents are kind of the ones that are causing the problems. But regardless, like, if we think about reducing our children's vulnerabilities, we need to have these conversations with our kids, equip them, empower them, help them to think strategically about how to look at their bodies and who they are as image bearers in God's big picture. And so I think if we can equip children, then when somebody says something snarky at school, it's going to go through, it's going to meet a lens of a voice from your parents that is loving and kind. It's going to meet a lens or like a filter of what is God, who am I as God's image, created in his image. It's going to kind of have to filter through those things and not necessarily, hopefully, cut as deep. The second one is perpetrators look for the vulnerable. They look for those out there. And of course, there's other risk factors with, being in maybe a single parent home or having a special needs or being in foster care. There are significant risk factors, but one of them is just really kind of poor self-image, distorted self-image. So if we can really empower and reduce those vulnerabilities, not only are we helping to reduce the blow and the impact that they're going to hear from their peers, but from perpetrators as well. But really, I agree with Justin. And one of the reasons I wanted to write this book is because as I was watching our girls grow up and even just hanging out with the neighbors or with my friends, I'm like, you are causing the problem, like literally grabbing their bellies and being like, I've got to lose this weight. And the kids are right there. So I don't know if it's just something they just don't think about, or if it's, you know, they think like, oh, they don't hear us, they're little and they're down there. But kids hear everything. They pick up on everything. They are watching us and wanting to model our behavior. And this is a topic that is learned behavior. The way that our kids are going to think about themselves and talk about themselves and talk about other children is what they're going to learn at home. And then everything on social media, every form of media sexualizes women and girls. And then the children internalize that message, and all those apps and even games. I mean, there's video games where the players are raping girls. Like, it is just, it's horrific. And TikTok, oh my gosh, if you go on TikTok, you just see these young girls that are overly sexualized in the way they're posing and talking about themselves and dressing. And so I think it's something that we have got to be very aware of. And from day one, you know, not maybe when they're infants, but from an early age, talking with them about how strong their bodies are, how beautiful their bodies are, like, because God made them strong and beautiful and smart, and just really kind of developing that conversation as they get older.
Let me jump in on this one, since we're, I just railed about the moms doing this thing, which I think is, I hope there are a bunch of parents who are hearing this, and there's forgiveness that you have sinned against your child if you do that to them. There's forgiveness for that. And so just go get your forgiveness, go to Jesus, but let your behavior change. Be aware of that. So I don't want to just shame you and just dump the guilt of failure on your lap. There's forgiveness for this. But let me address the dads. Guess what? Your daughter is more than just a beautiful princess. If beautiful is the only adjective you have, you need to find a bigger vocabulary. And this is more frustrating than the moms doing their thing, because they're smart, strong, kind, leaders, and beautiful. But I'm surprised. I've just started telling all my buddies who have daughters, they're like they'll take a picture and post it on social media. Isn't my daughter beautiful? I'm like, what else is she? Or like, hey, this is my beautiful daughter. I get it, but I hear the adjective beautiful so much with regard to girls and young women that I just have to look at the dads and say, hey man, expand that. Like, because when you give that to her, it's great. It's great. I love the fact that you are actually referring to your daughter as beautiful and giving her a sense of self-esteem. But when that's the only word you use, that's her only worth. That's what she brings to the world. That's what she brings to the table, is her beauty. And do you really want her thinking that? And here's the other thing. She is beautiful in God's eyes. She's beautiful in your eyes, but she's going to think you're crazy if she starts comparing herself to other people and realizing she's not beautiful by the world standards or cultural standards. So you're setting her up to be like, whatever. All the time, because I really think they are. I'm like, you guys are like stunningly pretty. Like, you're really pretty, but you're also like an amazing athlete. You're an amazing artist. Like, you're a really good friend. You're really funny. And so I think that helps with some of this body image issues, is that we inadvertently step into it. No dad's trying to set up his daughter to only think of herself as beautiful. Or with the boys, like, hey, it's driving me bonkers. Like, hey, he's a little heartbreaker. Like, all the girls are going to like him. It's like, okay, first of all, it's weird that you're talking about your kid like that. He's not a little stud. Do you know what that means? He's a little stud. Like, be a little bit more reflective of your words. But is he a little bit more than just his looks? Like, let's try to set these kids up to hear something else besides being so looks oriented. Are they godly? Maybe that would be a good one. Like, this is my daughter. She's beautiful, smart, and godly. Like, that'd be a cool thing to say, to hear your dad say about you too. So I'm a little fired up. So
no,
I love and
that.
wait for the next one.
Well, and it's why all of these conversations today all relate together, because the words we say matter, how we're communicating in front of our children and to them. Both of those things matter. Because it becomes the voice, or like the vocabulary that they're going to use in their own heads to think about the world, to think about themselves. So yeah, I'll have to go repent after we're done, and move on in the grace of the Lord there. But we've talked about things not to say, in front of our children or to our children. What are some positive ways that we can help them develop a positive image about their body?
I'm going to jump in on something Lindsey taught me about food, because and this, we could have talked about this in a previous question, but I remember came home one time again, and she was like, the girls are talking about sometime food and anytime food. I'm like, that's weird, like appropriate, inappropriate touch. Like, why are we using these weird words for food? And she's like, oh, because, one of their friends talked about, oh, I can't have that. That's bad food. And she's like, nope, because that again, that undermines kind of a disordered relationship with food. No, dessert's not bad. It's just not an every time or anytime food. Certain things are anytime food and certain things are sometimes food. So that for me is just helpful of a healthy way of relating. I'll throw it back to Lindsey, because that's not specifically body image, but it was in the practical, what's helpful on this topic category. So what would you say is a helpful way to encourage healthy body image?
I love that one that you mentioned. I think, you can just draw out, like Justin was talking earlier when he was riffing, but just, I love watching you play sports. I love seeing how strong you are. I love, hearing you teach me about what you're learning in school. Like, you're kind of just pulling out things that that they're really into at that moment. That's going to change as the seasons change. And if you find that your kid's in a rut or not really feeling very confident, it's like, okay, you know what, we're going to try some new things. And, let's brainstorm what kind of a bucket list, like, what are some things that you really want to try? And it could just be one-time kind of attempts, like, let's go try this new putt-putt place. And so just kind of getting them out of their norm. Or it could be, hey, like, you want to work towards trying out for the volleyball team. Okay, you might not be at the place where you're ready to try out. What are some skills and different things you need to put in place so that you are ready for tryouts? We had our oldest daughter, she played volleyball for the first time this fall on like the school team. And then she started playing club this spring. And so club is like kind of in the off season just to really get more practice and experience. Well, she's very green to it. And so she was on the bench a lot, and there were just a lot of tears at home. And that's heartbreaking as a parent, but it's like, okay, this is a chance to really grow some grit. And you're on the bench, you can keep encouraging your teammates, or you can sit there like a dud and just not be very, encouraging. But let's look into like, okay, you love the sport and you want to get better. So let's reach out for some private lessons. And now she's starting, and she's like their go-to setter in just a matter of weeks. And that's not going to be every example for them and for every kid, but for her, just in that one sense of like, I can't give up. Like, I think grit is so important, more so than anything. It doesn't matter where Jess and I went to school. It doesn't matter where we put them in school, but really building in that understanding of grit and trying things. So all that to be said, I think you can call out things that you see in your child that they're not thinking of. Like Justin will regularly, like when he's putting the girls like saying goodnight, he'll talk to them about like, I really enjoyed you telling me that story, or you have such, quick wit. Like, I love kind of just seeing how your mind works. Like, your brain is just going a mile a minute as you're reading this book. And so I think you've got to, at least one parent or somebody in the family has got to be good about pulling out those things that you see, because they're not able to see that, they're not developed enough. And we aren't even as adults, like we get kind of down in our funk. And so we need people that are going to speak those truths into us and be able to see, I see God working on you in this way. And I see what the Lord is doing in your life. And he is making you such a kind friend to X, Y, and Z. He's growing you as a leader. So there's things like that. And then there's also, let's build a bucket list, because you are young and you've got things like, no matter your age, but God has put you here to glorify him and enjoy him forever. And we are going to try a lot of things that he has just put in our pathway. And so that can be small things. It could be, let's go try this new smoothie place and or let's, go for a bike ride together. I think you've got to be intentional, because if you're not, other voices are going to get to their head and they're not going to be loving and kind.
I had a few more thoughts real quick, if you're okay with that. Trying to get them not to compare themselves to their peers is huge. And the way to do that isn't to say, don't do that, but like, hey, let's look at what God made. Look how different all these animals are. Look how different people are. Like, and just getting them to see the variety and be like, let's not like, imagine going to the ice cream place and you have 32 flavors and you only pick one, but you never enjoy the other varieties. But like, just God makes a lot of different things and let's enjoy that. But also being around, there's different types of people and even different cultures that are a tad bit more body positive than others. And being like, so being like my girls have pretty big eyebrows because I gave them that gift from those bushy eyebrows. And so kids started saying stuff like, why are your eyebrows so big? They started feeling self-conscious. I was like, oh, hold on a second here. And so I actually, had them in a conversation with a stylist, and she was like, I cannot wait to get my hands on your eyebrows. Those are amazing. You're so lucky. Like and I started showing them pictures. Like I played the game probably horribly. Like I showed them a picture of Brooke Shields and I was like, this is Brooke Shields. She's a famous model. She has huge eyebrows. And then Madonna's daughter, who she's a model, like whatever age she is, but she has enormous eyebrows. I'm like, look, models have big eyebrows. Again, I'm not highlighting the sexualizing or trying to, but trying to find a way to be affirming of that. And then again, I think the being sensitive to how you talk about your own health is going to be huge. And I think it's good for how the parents interact. I think good for them is for them to hear me complimenting my wife on how beautiful she is, but also how smart she is, how hardworking she is. And it's good for them to hear, Lindsey say, hey, looking good, honey. Who's my man? There he is. And then other things like how hard he works. Like that does amazing stuff for a child to be like, oh, that's normal interaction. Like, of course, my dad's not the most handsome man in the world. I tell them I am, and they always laugh, but like clearly he's not. But that's kind of cool. Like this is what we're looking for, is someone who loves me like that. Like we're not looking for everyone in the world to think I'm beautiful and amazing. Like just setting the expectations, I think, goes a long way for them.
Yeah, and their identity being in who they are in Christ, in the relationship of the family too, like you're describing. It has to do with our family, and we love each other. Not that we're trying to please the whole world or be who everyone in the world wants us to be. I do want to bring up too, as a mom who has a couple sons, I see on the flip side, you guys were bringing up like, only telling our daughters they're beautiful and not also talking about like them being strong or smart and brave and these other things. And I can see it sometimes flipped the other way with boys, where there can be a tendency to like talk about just their like athletic ability or something like that. And so we try to make a point, we have very athletic, gifted sons, and I love to watch them play. That's great. But also to bring up, oh, I loved seeing the way you encouraged your teammates, or, oh, I saw the way that you went over and comforted the person who made a bad play. Like those kinds of things are really important as well, I think.
I think Lindsey had to leave because we have daughters who need to be picked up.
Yes.
And so, and I do pick up the kids too. I actually pick them up all the time. I love that because I'm imagining a boy hearing his mom or dad just say something like, hey, you look really handsome today. Like that is a really powerful thing, watching them flourish in the kind of the warmth of their parents' affirmation. That's a huge gift.
Yeah. Well, Justin, and tell Lindsey as well. Thank her as well for me. Thank you guys for taking the time to chat today. This has been incredible, and I know will be an encouragement to a lot of parents. If anyone is wanting to learn more about either of these topics that we've talked about, what resources would you point them towards? And then where can people find you guys on the internet?
Well, justinholcomb.com is where we have all of our books and a few articles. I have hundreds of articles, but some of them are on these topics. We're both on social media, Facebook and Instagram, Twitter. And for topics on this, there's a really good book, a Christian psychologist named Churban, Dr. Churban, Chirban, on child sexual development. He endorsed our first book, God Made All of Me. And I've really appreciated his stuff because he goes through all the way up to 18, like how do you start talking about self-awareness of your body and puberty? Like we're not dealing with puberty issues at all. We're dealing with pre-puberty, but that book was a gift. Jessica Thompson is another author who I really appreciate. She wrote a book with her brother about how to talk to children about sex. I think it's called Mom and Dad, What Sex, and it goes through some of these issues. On body image, I think I just want to highlight what your main point was about who we are in Christ, identity in Christ. I don't know where to start. There's so many books on identity, and I mean, something on Ephesians would be great. It's a big identity in Christ book. I know probably Trillian Newbell has some books on identity in Christ. Just find one of your favorite authors and see if they have something on identity in Christ. That's going to be the foundation. Maybe some type of, I think parents going through the doctrine of creation. A lot comes from the doctrine of creation, looking at Genesis, of how God made them in His image and what that means, the dignity of that. So those are the places I would start off with.
That's fabulous. And I'll have links to those things in the show notes for this episode over at humilityanddoxology.com. Thank you so much. And I look forward to chatting with you guys again.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to be here, Amy. This is an honor, and it's fun to just talk about these and such wonderful questions that you've pulled out of me and Lindsey, that just ways that we've had to talk about things differently than we've been asked before. So thank you very much.